In this video, I'll show you September 21st, 2019. Officers responded to a domestic violence call in Austin, Texas. Deputy Pereira with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office arrived on the scene and knocked on the door of an apartment where 20-year-old Skylar Leal lived with her boyfriend, Eric Ramirez, to investigate the call, which was made by one of their neighbors.
Hey, let me talk to you real quick.
Yeah.
Do you need EMS?
No, I'm fine.
Come out here. Come out here.
I really don't want to deal with y'all people.
All right, well, we'll make sure you're okay.
I'm fine.
1636 County, we're code 4. She does not need EMS. So, what happened?
Nothing.
Look up for me. What's on your neck? What happened?
Nothing happened.
So, I have witnesses saying something happened. So, are you trying to protect him?
No, I just really don't like dealing with y'all. I really don't want to deal with y'all. I really don't.
Okay. So...
I don't need to talk to y'all. I really don't.
Do you have your ID on you or anything?
No, I don't.
So, what's your last name? Okay. Where is the guy that allegedly, I don't
know where he's at. I don't.
So he left?
He left.
Does he live in this apartment complex?
No, he does not.
You don't know which way he went?
I don't know, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
1636K94, victim's advising she does not know which way he went. So, I'm trying to figure out why your friends called the cops.
What friend?
Or your witnesses, whoever was over here that called us.
Okay.
So
we got into an argument.
Okay.
That's it.
Literally. Okay. It was nothing physical?
Nothing physical.
Where are the marks on your neck from?
We got into my necklace right here.
No, this right here. What is that from?
Does it really matter?
Yes.
It doesn't.
To make sure you're okay.
I'm fine, ma'am.
So.
I'm fine. Like, literally, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I get a rash talking to y'all. I do not want to talk to you, and especially Williamson County. Y'all have a really bad reputation. I've bad encounters with y'all. I do not want to.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
I know you aren't, ma'am.
Okay, so we need your cooperation.
I know, and I'm.
Do you want to press charges?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I do not.
Is there anyone else in the apartment with you?
My sister is here.
Okay, can I talk to her?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait,
you want to
no,
go get?
No, I really don't want you to talk.
Okay. Well, if she wants to talk to me, then I can talk to her.
She does not want to talk.
How do I know that?
Because I told her that she has nothing to do with this.
Okay, well, let me try to make contact with her. Do you want to go back inside for the time being?
No, I don't. I really don't.
Okay, well then step over here for me. So what's the deal?
What is your problem?
I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
I'm trying to tell you, ma'am. She had nothing to do with this. I called her after because
I called the cops.
I didn't call the cops.
I'm asking who called the cops.
Miss Leal informs Deputy Pereira that Mr. Ramirez has left the apartment, that she does not know where he is, and that she does not wish to press charges for domestic assault. Domestic violence laws vary widely among states, with state laws differing on issues such as how domestic abuse is defined, the types of crimes domestic abusers can be charged with, mandatory reporting requirements, and whether police officers are obligated to make an arrest. While some states have adopted policies that require police to make an arrest when responding to domestic violence calls, or file a report explaining why an arrest is not made. In Texas, it is left to a police officer's discretion whether to make an arrest. Article 14.03 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure states that officers may arrest without a warrant. Quote, persons who the peace officer has probable cause to believe have committed an offense involving family violence. Although Ms. Leal stated that she did not want to press charges against Mr. Ramirez, contrary to popular belief, it is not up to a victim to decide whether to pursue criminal charges. When officers investigate the scene of a possible crime, they are authorized to arrest a suspect if they conclude there is probable cause to do so. Likewise, prosecutors can file criminal charges against the victim's wishes if they have sufficient evidence to prove that the offense occurred without the victim's cooperation. Article 5.01 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure notes that, quote, family violence is a serious danger and threat to society and its members. Victims of family violence are entitled to the maximum protection from harm or abuse, or the threat of harm or abuse as is permitted by law. In any law enforcement response to allegations of family violence, the responding law enforcement shall protect the victim without regard to the relationship between the alleged offender and victim. Similarly, Article 5.04 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure states that, quote, the primary duties of a peace officer who investigates a family violence allegation or who responds to a disturbance call that may involve family violence are to protect any potential victim of family violence, enforce the law of this state, enforce a protective order from another jurisdiction, and make lawful arrests of violators. Even though Ms. Leal did not want to cooperate with the investigation, it is important to bear in mind that the responding police officers had a duty under Texas law to protect her. So I got her name and date of birth. She doesn't want to be cooperative. I see some marks on her neck that might be fresh. She's saying she's denying medical attention. She said she didn't want to talk to us. Sister doesn't want to talk. They live in here. So she's like, I don't even want you all in my house. I'm like, well, we got to find the guy that allegedly did this. So she didn't give direction, travel, description, anything. She's like, he left. I don't know where he went. Third level, Dickerson. So we need to see if this guy's inside your apartment. Who else is in here? My sister, Deputy Lorenzo Hernandez, who was once featured on the reality show Live PD, arrives on the scene and tries to force his way into the apartment. Miss Leal protests his attempt to enter while standing in front of the door, and Deputy Hernandez grabs her by the throat and throws her to the ground. We will discuss the legality of Deputy Hernandez's use of force in a moment, but it should first be noted that a court would likely conclude that the officers did have the authority to enter Miss Leal's apartment. The Fourth Amendment generally requires officers to have a warrant to enter a citizen's home without their permission. However, there are some exceptions to the warrant requirement, which include authorization to enter to protect individuals, such as domestic violence victims, from immediate harm. In the 2006 case of Georgia versus Randolph, the Supreme Court explained that, quote, no question has been raised or reasonably could be about the authority of the police to enter a dwelling to protect a resident from domestic violence, so long as they have good reason to believe such a threat exists. Thus, the question of whether the police might lawfully enter over objection in order to provide any protection that might be reasonable is easily answered yes. Although this case discussed situations where the perpetrator, rather than the victim, protested the officer's entry, courts often give officers wide latitude to enter dwellings when responding to domestic violence calls. For instance, in the 1989 case of State Viv Green, the Supreme Court of Arizona held that because domestic violence calls commonly involve dangerous situations in which the possibility for physical harm or damage escalates rapidly. Quote, the call itself creates a sufficient indication that an exigency exists.
To go into my apartment, yo, with what? I'm literally gonna press charges on y'all.
We have a possible felony.
Possible felony?
Yes.
For what? For who? He's not here, I'm telling you.
But you don't know where he went?
I don't know where he went. Lee.
Okay.
Like what?
You can understand where you're in handcuffs right now?
So what happened? We were trying to talk, right? That's all we were trying to do?
Okay, so I'm gonna take
Is there
these
a light in
handcuffs
here?
off you.
How do you turn the light
Are we
on?
gonna be cool if we take these handcuffs off?
The light's not on. It's not on.
All right, ma'am. So I wasn't here with information to relate to you. When we come to stuff like this, we're going to check for safety reasons, okay? We're going to make sure he's not here and you're not hiding him. We understand you don't want to cooperate. We can't force you to do that. We get that. We understand that. But you don't do what you just did. Now,
Only show up for something like this. We don't get your cooperation. That is what happens, okay? Deputy Hernandez tells Miss Leal that the altercation was a result of her non-compliance and implies that the deputies were within their authority to use force against her. However, a court would almost certainly disagree with Deputy Hernandez's interpretation of the situation. When determining whether the officer's use of force is constitutional, courts must decide whether the level of force employed was reasonable under the totality of the circumstances to reach this. Conclusion. Courts consider the three factors outlined in the 1989 Supreme Court case of Graham v. Connor, which are now quoting the severity of the crime at issue, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat to the safety of the officers or others, and whether he is actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest by flight. In the 2018 case of Darden v. City of Fort Worth, the Fifth Circuit expanded on this analysis, stating that, quote, "We have previously suggested that a constitutional violation occurs when an officer tases, strikes, or violently slams an arrestee who is not actively resisting arrest, and that, now quoting again, our case law makes clear that when an arrestee is not actively resisting arrest, the degree of force an officer can employ is reduced." Although Deputy Hernandez was at Miss Leal's apartment to investigate a report of domestic violence, which is a serious offense, it is crucial to keep in mind that Miss Leal was the victim and not the perpetrator of that offense. Miss Leal was also not resisting arrest, as she was not under arrest or even being detained, and she was not posing any sort of physical threat to the officers. While she did protest to the officers entering her apartment, there are many non-violent methods Deputy Hernandez could have employed to attempt to gain entry instead of immediately resorting to force. And even if some degree of force became necessary for the officers to enter, there is no possible justification for grabbing Miss Leal by the neck and throwing her to the ground. Under these circumstances, it is clear that a court would find the force used by Deputy Hernandez to be excessive. To make it make does not make us stop. Okay, it only makes us get you secure faster. Okay, it's my understanding you do not want to cooperate, correct? Yes, sir. Okay, we know who he is. We're going to find him eventually. He comes back over here. For whatever reason, you're having a call because he's continuing to do what he's going to do. We're going to take him to jail. Understand those circumstances that you y'all put yourselves in, and y'all make us have to deal with those issues. Okay, yes, sir. Then Sheriff Robert Shoddy ordered an internal investigation into the altercation, and Deputy Hernandez was suspended for 1 day as a result. He was promoted to detective 2 months later. But in January 2021, Deputy Hernandez resigned when former Sheriff Shoddy left office after being defeated by current Sheriff Mike Gleason. On May 17, 2021, former Deputy Hernandez was charged with official oppression and assault for the force he used against Miss Leal. And on September 20, 2021, Miss Leal filed a federal lawsuit against Mr. Hernandez and the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. As of the date of this episode, both the criminal charges against Mr. Hernandez and Miss Leal's civil suit are still pending. Hernandez gets an F for escalating a relatively peaceful encounter into a physical altercation, maintaining an unprofessional and dispassionate attitude, and for needlessly using an unnecessarily high degree of force against Miss Leal. It was less than 10 seconds between the time that Mr. Hernandez first made contact with Miss Leal and when he forced her to the ground with a choke. As mentioned earlier, the Williamson County deputies were likely within their authority to enter Miss Leal's apartment to investigate the domestic disturbance. However, it's difficult to rationalize, as their method of doing so if they truly suspected that Ms. Leal was a victim of abuse. In October of 2019, the International Association of Chiefs of Police developed a model policy for domestic violence calls. This policy states that officers should take photographs of all injuries of all parties involved in the call. However, none of the deputies did this, despite Deputy Pereira's claim that Ms. Leal had sustained an injury on her neck. This is an important discrepancy in the way that the deputies handled this investigation, because unless the uncensored body camera footage clearly showed Ms. Leal's alleged injury, there is no way to distinguish the injuries that she sustained from abuse and those sustained from being choked and physically subdued by the officers. This may offer the suspect a legitimate defense if he's ever charged with domestic violence as a result of this interaction. As the deputies were releasing Ms. Liao, Mr. Hernandez made several inflammatory statements that undermined her victim's status and essentially blamed Ms. Liao for continuing a pattern of abuse. Mr. Hernandez told Ms. Liao, quote, "Understand that these circumstances y'all put yourselves in and y'all make us have to deal with these issues and, quote, we have a job to do. Whether you understand that in the moment, I don't care." Nothing that Mr. Hernandez did was conducive to establishing an environment of trust with Ms. Liao, and it is clear that Mr. Hernandez failed to consider the psychological implications of being a victim of long-term abuse. This interaction highlights the importance of thorough domestic violence training and well-established domestic violence policy within police departments nationwide. As for Ms. Liao, it's difficult to assign a grade to an individual who is clearly suffering from emotional trauma outside the context of this interaction. Considering the information provided to the officers by the 911 caller, it's safe to assume that Ms. Liao had been dealing with a mentally and likely physically taxing situation, and she was under a lot of emotional stress when she initially made contact with Deputy Pereira. The IACP specifically mentions that victims of abuse may respond to officers with denial and anger for litany of reasons, and acknowledges that, quote, "Officers need to understand that victims of domestic violence can display a wide variety of reactions to the violence. No two victims may express themselves in the same way. There is no denying that domestic violence calls are often extremely complex and difficult to resolve peacefully. Thank you very much for watching the video. Subscribe our channel for next video.